Hi, everyone. Nice to see you today. Hopefully the rain has not killed your joy for the Sunday. I haven't seen the sun in a couple of days, so I'm not exactly sure what it still looks like. This topic today is particularly important to me because it's far more simple to digest than we actually anticipate. So before I get into that, my career really started out in human resources, and we'll dive deeper into this as I give you different examples about how to apply what I'm going to tell you today. And after human resources, I got into Machinima, and then I spent some time at Google, and then formerly I was the president of OpTic Gaming, and then today I now am the co-owner of Infinite Esports Entertainment. We're the parent company that owns OpTic Gaming and the Houston Outlaws, rivals to the Dallas Fuel here, the Texas team. We always joke each other about that. And our approach to business in esports is far different than I think most actually realize. So we'll touch on that topic. But when it comes specifically to preparing for an esports career, I think we overcomplicate it because we like lists in America. We like top 10 principles here, top 5s to do here. Insert whatever you want. That's usually how the story goes. I don't think we remember much of it or how to apply even some of it. And that's not to discredit it. I'm just saying there might be a more simple way to think about the approach. So we'll unpack that a little bit today as well. I'll give you some examples, and then I'll give you some feedback and some next steps about how you can put this into practice. But I really believe it's based on one simple principle. And we'll say this a few times, we'll reiterate the theme. It's to remain savvy and get to know and build relationships with people who are already in esports. Remain savvy, build relationships with people who are already in esports. So let's unpack that a little bit. In 2006, I was a co-founder of OpTic Gaming. And at that time, we're just friends who play video games on each other's couches or on Xbox Live, and we built relationships online. We had no real business plan or real thought about what esports entertainment would look like. In fact, we didn't even use the word esports. It was still too new, still too revolutionary. And esports was still around. There's still gaming competitions. Halo was in its prime at that time. So there's a lot to digest from back then. But if we didn't spend the time to build these relationships and put them into action back when OpTic was formed, if we didn't figure out savvy ways to grow the business, then we really wouldn't be as far as we were today. So here's an example. We founded OpTic Gaming, as I was saying, in 2006, and at that time, we're just friends on the couch, and we entered into this tournament. I was with some friends, and we were really excited because we were going to get $250 if we won first place, right? Big money, big spenders. And we didn't get first place. And so here I am thinking, well, I didn't get this $250 to split with my friends. I ended up getting second place. Little did I know that second place actually was going to be a key time where I was going to be challenged with the principles that I'm talking about here, which is being savvy. Second place prize was a capture card, a digital video recorder. At that time, the most popular one was called a Hauppauge 1212. This is 2009 or 10 or so. And the company that gave us this gift was Machinima. Now, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't really know who Machinima was. In fact, I couldn't even say the word Machinima. And for those of you who don't know who Machinima is, they are kind of like the MTV of the gaming generation back at the time. What MTV was doing with music and music videos, developing a programming model and ancillary content around it, Machinima wanted to do with gaming. You take a bunch of content creators, esports professionals, create content, develop a programming model, and effectively become this new age company in the digital revolution that was starting to happen. So I built a relationship with the individuals at Machinima. In fact, as soon as they told me about this model, this MTV of the gaming generation, I was instantly hooked. And I kept bugging them back and forth, trying to be savvy about getting a job at the place. I got rejected a couple of times because I just had no background aside from OpTic. Well, eventually, after building a relationship and staying savvy about building a relationship with them in terms of sending them gameplay footage and getting to know the person who was running the program, I got offered a job there. And that job really turned into the backbone of my career. In fact, taking second place in that tournament really changed everything for me. So I packed up from Arizona, I moved out to LA. I had no business being in LA. I was from a sheltered life in Arizona. LA is this really huge city. I had no idea what I was doing. And I didn't know much about the startup world. And Machinima at this time had maybe 25 employees. We were really small. So everything we did, despite having a grand vision, we had to be very nimble. We had to be very savvy, very tactical in building strategies and solving problems. It's kind of like going through a jungle with a machete, but the jungle's also on fire, so you're just swinging around, spinning in circles, trying to get everything figured out, right? But you develop some really key skills. And I keep going back to the word savvy because you had to know what you were doing. There's a lot of failure, there's a lot of trial, there's a lot of error, there's a lot of course correction, there's a lot of relationship building that had to take place in order to get the job done. Well, that said, ultimately it turned out to be a very successful run there for about 4 years. And then I moved on to Google. And at Google, I got personally recruited to help build and grow esports and gaming. And at the time at Google, believe it or not, and all their thousands of employees, and popular as YouTube was at this time, they only had 2 employees working on gaming. I was employee number 3 in this little hyper niche team, kind of like this little startup inside a company that has unlimited resources. And we were just building relationships with publishers and content creators. There was no formal esports strategy, right? But from the skills and experience I learned at Machinima, right, how to be savvy, solve a problem, and build relationships with people who already were successful in the industry or just starting out, allowed us to build some momentum and really prepare for the launch of YouTube Gaming, which ultimately ended up going back directly in YouTube with a few key features that we learned would be extremely valuable to the gaming audience going forward. So after a couple of years there, I went back into the startup world. And in this startup world, it was more so at OpTic Gaming, right? I had been a co-founder the whole time. But OpTic Gaming had grown to a level of success in which we were saying, what does our future look like? What kind of investment do we need in order to structure our company? And what kind of investment do we need in order to plan for the future of our company? And how is that going to look once it's all executed and done? What kind of structure would we have? How would we execute to ensure that we're not just like every other team out there and really set ourselves different, have some strong differentiation? So I came back at that time for a good 2 years or so as the president. We went on a financing run, which really turned into an acquisition by Neil Liebman of the Texas Rangers. And it was at that time that we formed Infinite Esports Entertainment, where I now reside. And Infinite Esports Entertainment is effectively one of the largest esports holdings companies in the world. Infinite is the parent company that owns OpTic Gaming, that owns OpTic League of Legends, the Houston Outlaws, and Obey, and Team Allegiance. And we didn't stop there when it came to integrating OpTic. We said, well, what are we going to do in order to continue to pioneer the ecosystem? So not only do we have 5 teams or 5 flagship brands that make up 15 teams as subsidiaries, we also invested and founded in a content company, a merchandising company, an events company, similar to what you're seeing here today. And it was important for us because we wanted to have something that scaled. We wanted to be able to influence the industry on a far greater scale than just owning and operating a team business. And so we did that. Now, I'm telling you all this, and I'm giving you this huge data dump on purpose. And I believe that in order to get into a successful career in esports, there's one simple way to prepare. And that's truly by being savvy, understanding your industry and building relationships with people who are already in that industry. And in order to do that, you kind of have to go out on a leap of faith, right? So here's an example. Going back to the Machinima part, if I didn't take the time to build a relationship with their head of programming, even though he got shot down left and right, I don't know if I'd be on the stage today talking to you about it. I had to learn how to edit. I had to learn how to do Photoshop. It was all through YouTube videos. I didn't take any formal education for it. My degree was in communications. And I actually thought getting into gaming in the first place, you had to be a software engineer. And it wasn't until Game Informer, back in 2006, when I still read magazines, Game Informer said, hey, the developers are looking for new ways for them to engage their audiences. So they had everything from more junior roles like community managers opening up to more business development roles that hyper-focused on what was happening in the digital realm. Because this is around the time that Google had also bought YouTube. So they're preparing for that digital future, right? So I continued to press on from that and continued to build those relationships. And a lot of those relationships I still have today. But it didn't take a formal education in order to go in there and do that. It just took us stepping out in faith. Here's another example. There's an individual we hired who I met at a tournament. It was back in January of this year. His name is Jonathan Andrews. And Jonathan was the head of the student body organization that headed up esports at LSU. Well, I was walking by, and usually at these events, I'm zipping around all over the place because it's from one meeting to the next. Jonathan felt it was savvy enough to come and introduce himself and just start a conversation. It was really that simple. And so he did that, and it led to Jonathan really inviting me to be a guest speaker at something he was doing with LSU and some city officials who were asking for more about esports. Turns out I couldn't go to that due to a conflict of being in another state at the time, so I sent the president of Engage, which is our events company, and those two developed a relationship, and then a couple months later, Jonathan actually got hired, and he now works on our events team. And our events team, our events company, is the actual company that owns and operates the esports stadium here in Arlington. Maybe some of you have seen that announcement that came out in March. Or you might have seen the recent announcement that the ECS finals in November will be hosted there. And when I talk about savviness, I'm not talking about anything, sometimes we overcomplicate words as well. We give it too much glory than it actually deserves. Jonathan was savvy in the sense that he just came up and said, can I talk to you about esports? And now it led to him having a very strong entry-level career that will turn into something far more magnificent than what he even realizes. So it was really strong for him to go out and do that. Take that leap of faith and go introduce yourself to someone. And so the overall point is this. There's certain ways to go about handling your business. There's certain ways to go out and get educated, and those are all great ways. None of them should be discredited. But if you're not taking the time to go out and meet with people, if you're not taking the time to set up a LinkedIn profile, to go and get a professional photo done, which you can do with an iPhone, by the way, develop that profile, get to know people and spend time with people, understand their interests in what's happening in the esports space, then you're already at a disadvantage. So go out and do that. It's not just about having a LinkedIn, right? But it's about what you do with that. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg would say that quite often about Facebook. It's not so much about getting a bunch of people to come to your website. It's what you do with them when they get there. So in terms of you having a LinkedIn profile or a social profile or whatever it is in which you connect with people who are in esports, go and do something with it. Here's a practical tip, and this is one that we often teach. Get your LinkedIn profile set up really well. Talk about your purpose, your experience, get a professional photo done. But don't stop there. Go out and read articles of what's happening in esports. Look at anywhere you want. It can be about sponsorships and what's happening in the sales categories, partnerships, events, what's happening in the pro space, content space. Go look at those articles. Look who's quoted in those articles. Go find them on LinkedIn, send them the article, tell them what you loved about the article, ask them for 10 minutes of their time. Sometimes they'll say no, sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes it only takes one person to talk to, in the same way Jonathan Andrews took one person to talk to, and now he's got a really good career working at a budding esports company that has a lot of potential and opportunity for growth and scale. It's very, very simple. It's far more simple than we have actually realized over the course of getting into esports. So, after this speech, I'd like to challenge anyone here in the audience to kind of take that first step. I'll go and hang out on the side for a few extra minutes. If you can find a way to give me your contact information, email, first name, I'll take all of those emails. I'll send out a mailing list. We'll hop into a Discord at some point in the next 30 days, and we'll dive really deep into some best practices that you can really think through and some stuff that I've really applied over the course of my career, being in esports for 12 years. And we'll dive into that, and we'll look at some LinkedIn profiles, and I'll send you some examples, and we can develop a good piece, a good relationship in order to build some momentum. So I strongly encourage you to do that, because it could be the actual game changer that you're looking for. And whether it's not, at least you're taking a step in the right direction to do what? What we just talked about, right? Be savvy and develop relationships with people who are already in the industry. It really is that simple. There's a lot of hard work that comes in after the fact, but just getting started already gives you an advantage. So thank you guys for allowing me to speak here today.